Hi, this is Casey, and you're listening to me on the Alchemy Podcast. Soon we will be on the Listen Up Podcast Network, and then you can catch all archives, you can catch all my episodes, you can catch little bumpers like this one that we make for commercial purposes so that you can go through our website and then click on the sponsored links for our sponsors so that they get money and then we get money and everybody gets money and we're all happy. Isn't that fun? But actually, there's a fun silver lining to it, too. You see, if you don't like the actual company or campaign or politician or whatever's being advertised to you, if you click on the sponsored link for that person, that actually costs them 80 cents a click. Did you know that? It does. And if you don't like, say, political candidate X, then you can just cost that political candidate 80 cents every time you click on their sponsored link, and then you're costing them money for nothing because you're never going to vote for them. Isn't that fun? That's really fun. And so if you go through our website and click on all the sponsored links, then that means that you will be helping me get money, and I will be helping you cost your preferred politician that you don't like all the money. You see? It's a win-win. Stay tuned for alchemy. And so the sailor said to the drag queen, "Loose lips sink ships." And the drag queen said, "Honey, my lip syncs are always on point." And hello, sailor. Stay tuned for alchemy. Yo, what's up? It is the 10th of February in the year of our Lord, 2023. Anno Domini. My name is Casey, and you are listening to me on what will soon be the Listen Up Podcast Network, and happy early Valentine's Day, everybody. Aww. It's the lovey-dovey episode, isn't it? Yes. We have... What number episode is this? My gosh, we're at number 6. Wow. Oh, well, 6 is the number for the Lover's card in Tarot. And it's a Friday, the day of Venus, the goddess of love. Venus's day is today. Venus's day. You don't get much more Valentine's Day you don't get much more Valentine-y than that, right? Come on. Oh my gosh. So I am sitting here. I am drinking this lovely cup of tea, which is not a sponsor, but I do love them, and they did provide this. I do want to give them one very brief shout out to Market Spice here in Seattle, Washington at Pike Place Market, who were very lovely to me when I went in, and they recognized the sound of my voice. Wow, you recognized my call, sir. Anyway, so the team at Market Spice were absolutely wonderful. They apparently listened to the show, and so thank you guys. I'm enjoying the Market Spice signature blend of cinnamon orange, and it's lovely. I like it with sugar, but it's sweet enough on its own. And I'm going to have a sip before we get started. Hold on. Gosh, it's so good. Anyway, I am not being paid by them to say that. I'm just really, really, really into tea. All types of tea. Speaking of all types of tea, someone should be home now. And that should be a bong rip rather than... That should be a bong rip rather than a slug of tea. But hey, the day is young. Venus's day, specifically. All right, so let's get into alchemy. So, happy Valentine's Day, all those lovers out there and all those people who are calling it Singles Awareness Day. Up yours. I hope I'm not one of them. But Valentine's Day has hence why I'm going to be going all out for Valentine's Day for Anthony. Oh boy, is he in for a surprise? Anyway, I hope that's not what he's saying of me when he's listening to this right now. Hello. Hi, Anthony. Happy early Valentine's Day. So, we have Valentine's Day traditions which well predate the life of Saint Valentine himself. Now, happy Valentine's Day. The traditions of Valentine's Day, they are very new. Believe it or not. And the ancient holidays where from they're derived are very different, but they're not so incompatible that we can't trace with similitude the origins of today's traditions back even further earlier than the life and times of St. Valentine himself. First of all, St. Valentine is a Christian saint. And he's actually not entirely to thank for them, though, all the symbols of Valentine's Day. In fact, it's common knowledge that most of the Christian saints, or at least many of them, have either direct or immediate or tangential relationships or are identical with the ancient gods that replaced the Roman state religion in the centuries after the birth of Christ. In many instances, it is the saints that have the same names as deities, because they're very popular names back then. The gods were very popular, widely known, beloved. They've been around for millennia before Christianity came around. And but the thing that makes them saints is that they accomplish miracles. Many of them. They can do these supernatural feats by the power of God. Although, rather than ancient divine magic, as the gods would have them be, it's attributed later on to, as their saintly identities, Christian miracle. But these saints did exist. There's no question. Unlike many people who question the existence of the gods or God, it depends on whether you believe it or not, who you talk to. But I think we're all in agreement that the saints really did exist. And I personally subscribe to God and the gods being real, actual, real as fuck. Others may not. But these people who were canonized as saints by the Catholic Church in the early days of Christianity, they really did have these names, presumably given to them by parents. Generally the people who name people. And so it actually speaks a lot more, ironically, to ancient divine magic rather than it does Christian dogma, that, for instance, each saint has a miracle that is in the realm of jurisdiction of the god they're named after. That's strange, isn't it? To many of you. Not to me, but to many of you. I'm showing you guys my world. Part of your world. All right. It's, for instance, Saint Elias has a name that's a derivative of the name Helios, the god of the sun. And he has a miracle that has to do with fire and light. Saint Valentine is one who's worthy of examination, and so is his name. Valencia, with a V, is an ancient name for Rome, the city of Rome, and the embodiment of Rome, kind of like how the goddess Britannia is of Great Britain and its empire today. The word valency that we derive from that, as well as the really cool Decemberist song, is, as I'm reminded by someone earlier today, and as I reminded Anthony not that long ago, has to do with power. And we derive words from it like covalency or equivalency, or for strange reasons that I don't really understand, not ambivalency, however, but I digress. I'm ambivalent about it. So Saint Valentine, I need to sub it to you. Hold on. All right, let's play our game. So Saint Valentine has a holiday in which, according to modern observations, has to do with love, romance, marriages in many instances, as well as sex and sexy time and caring and condredity and candy and giving gifts and cards to honor these relationships in our lives and beyond, and more importantly, those within them. And all this is done in the name of Saint Valentine. But is he really who we should be doing it for? As I like to say, is he though? Is he though? Well, Saint Valentine was martyred in Rome in the 3rd century AD, Anno Domini. That's the era we're in now, as opposed to BC, before Christ. And he happened to be murdered on the 14th of February, which is Valentine's Day. That's why it's his day. He was murdered that day, or martyred. Which is a little take on the word murdered, but for a cause. I try to make you feel better about it. But it's more than that, too. He was a Christian who, and this is what all searches have indicated, the most you can tell what he was doing was preaching the good word of Christ in Rome. Okay, well, that says to me, first of all, red flag. He was probably being a real dick about it. They don't tell you. He seems like the picture of innocence, but the early church wanted you to think that. So he was probably being a real dick about it. I was only preaching the good word here in Rome. Yeah, well, they usually don't kill you over that. Rome's a tolerant place. And I'm going to digress from my notes here for a minute. Roman theology in the old state religion was not domineering like Christianity was when it got there. They had this policy where if Rome expanded its empire and took over your country, right? And say you're, where could you be? Babylon, right? So you're Babylon. I'm Rome. I come over there to Rome, and I see that you have the god Marduk, right? He's a thunder god. All the attributes are there corresponding with Jupiter, Zeus, right? So I look at your religion, I don't think, you're wrong, his name is this, and this is what he believes, and you're just wrong, you heretic. I don't think that. I think, clearly this is the same God, and we just call him two different things. So suddenly we take over your town, we put up a new sign at the temple that says, welcome back to the new grand reopening of the now reformed Temple of Marduk Jupiter. Welcome. 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. noon every Sunday. Actually, Thursday, if it would actually be Thursday. Believe it or not. So that's how Rome looked at religion, in a sort of synchronicity, a sort of relativism, but not relativism. I call it synchronicity. Correspondency, really. If you have the god Zeus in Greece and you have the god Jupiter in Rome, it's the same god. You say potato, I say potato is the Roman way of describing how their attitude is toward religion. And so there's actually not that much of an incompatibility with Christianity and the old Roman state religion. In fact, they had to graft a lot of Christianity onto it. Maybe else they couldn't convert the locals. But the idea is, though, that the early church wanted you to believe that there was such great incompatibility after a while. Once Christianity had settled in a little bit, then they started to get mean. And then they started to tell you, okay, well, now you have to do it this way. Rather than, and the relativism and the correspondency rather, sort of went to the wayside because they forced it out, because they were real dickbags about it, right? So when they say St. Valentine was just preaching the good word of Christ in Rome, I'm thinking to myself, what were you fucking doing to piss people off? But regardless, he was martyred by people who were not cool with the idea of Christianity taking over Rome in the 3rd century AD. That means the 3rd century, only 300 years after the death of Christ, which is about the time that Rome started to become Christianized. Not by majoritarianism, but by force. And given how the Christians treated those who weren't Christian, which were the majority of people, after they did take over Rome around the same time, one might even say that their hostility toward St. Valentine, could be said to be perhaps understandable, or at least premonitionally, prophetically sound in its logic. Like, murder's always bad, but I mean, I could understand why they did it, maybe a little bit. Those forward thinkers. So anyway, St. Valentine himself is the patron saint of courtly love. By the way, do not send me letters. I didn't just say that St. Valentine deserved to be martyred. Don't do that. I won't read them. So he's the patron saint of courtly love. Emphasis there upon courtly, which is where the justification for Valentine's Day comes from among Christian peoples and in much of Western calendar, which Christianity very much influenced. But it's important to remember that Christianity grafted itself, like I said, upon ancient Roman state religion, which was already established in there as an infrastructure. And that was very different, but not so incompatible that they couldn't do that. And not so incompatible that they couldn't just change God names into saint names. But did they do that, though? Because these saints really did exist. And they did actually perform, as all recorded history accounts for and attests to, these miracles. And so, since they did do these things, they were named these things, is it the saintliness of Christianity and the dogma thereof? And is it Christ working through them? Or is it the ancient gods? Or is it both? You know, for instance, since they had to graft a lot of that onto it, they changed a lot of saint names from god names, and they used a lot of the old temples too, and they just renamed them and repurposed the altars, the basilicas, etc. The signification and much of the symbology still remains there intact from the old ancient Roman state religion. For instance, Saint Peter has a basilica in Rome, rather famous for being, one of the main landmarks of the Vatican. But it's a Christian basilica, but it's actually a temple grafted onto, or it's a basilica grafted onto a temple. Made in the AD era, but began in the BC era, as being grafted upon the temple of Jupiter, Zeus, Optimus Maximus. That's why it's called St. Peter, like Jupiter's Basilica. There's even statues that don't even change the name of Jupiter, Optimus Maximus in the Vatican today. St. Peter, when you see him in Christian churches, looks identical. Even here in Seattle, there's St. James Cathedral downtown. Their statue inside of the Cathedral of St. Peter, shit you not, is identical to Jupiter in all the ancient Roman statues. Same facial features, same person, not same person, but same deity, then personified into a saint. It's weird to say that a deity is not a personification in and of itself, that the saint is the personification of deity, which is true. The deities are antecedent to the persons. And so it's no coincidence that St. Peter and Jupiter are the namesakes of that very holy and sacred space where the gods themselves once appeared. Now, many of the other changes include of timing and calendar days and months and weekdays. Even the word week, by the way, is also a Christianized attack on the old religion. The word W-E-E-K, week. I'm still undergoing dental surgery, so sorry. The 7 days of the week, even modernly, are named for the 7 major gods of ancient Rome and of Greece. And the early Anglo-Christians in England, for instance, when they created the word week, they replaced that word with a word that was previous to it called the septidi, or what you would call the 7 days. Now, when you say the word day out loud, it sounds like DEA, or DEI, not DEA, DEI. We'll have to have another episode on that one. DEI, or day, like de gratia, by the grace of God. It's a Latin word for day, or for God. It's one of them. And so when you say something like I said it early on, Venus's day, like Fridays are the days of Venus, right? So Venus's day sounds out loud in English like Venus herself is God today. And she is. And so they wanted to change that. And in so far as they wanted to come up with English words that sounded and appeared all but one letter off in difference in sound and effect from weak, as in W-E-A-K, they were trying to imply weakness as opposed to strength. This is because they were trying to get people who were followers of the oldest Roman state religion in Rome to convert to Christianity. We're going to take a break really quick, and I will be right back. You are listening to me, Caston, on what will soon be the... what network is it? I can't even remember. You're listening to me on the Listen Up Network. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more alchemy right after this. Hello, welcome back. Welcome back to Alchemy. It's me, Casey. Let's get right back to our discussion. So, we were talking about Christianity. We were talking about Valentine's Day. And a lot of you might be wondering how those things go together, like two peas in a pod, but they do somehow, despite all logical comprehension to the contrary. Now, I have been talking about how the days of the week, and even the word week, right, is sort of like a cop-out. So that, let me explain what I mean by that. The week was originally called the septidi, or the 7 days. Now, they came up with this English word that sounded and appeared all but one letter off from weakness, as opposed to strong, right? And this is because they were trying to get people who were followers of the old Roman state religion of many gods in Roman Britain to convert to Christianity. And since the days of the septidi, or the 7 days, are named because they're holy days to the 7 gods, and they directed people to hold them sacred to them divinely, men held them sacred. And so the early Christians decided that they wanted to take over everything, and be real dicks about it. So they wanted to rename the 7 days. Well, they couldn't. The gods are very popular, and they've been around for eons. The gods were too The gods were too strong there. But the 7-day period itself, however, the Septidi was not always it doesn't really roll off the tongue, right? So the Septidi, or the 7-day period, they decided to attack, and they renamed it a new 7-day span called the week, right? And because when you say, and they also changed it from Saturday to Sunday being the start of the week. Saturday, or as Jews know it, the Sabbath day, is Saturn's day. And Saturn is older than Jupiter. And so Saturn, being seniority, would always go first, right? So Saturn's day starts a week. They changed it to Sunday. That's why Jews have Saturn's day as the Sabbath day, and Christianity has Sundays. Because Christianity took over, and they wanted to, because Jesus is the Son of God. Get it, right? Like Domingo is Dominus, and I think it's Spanish, right? That means Sunday. It's the Lord's day. Domingo, Dominus, Lord. Anyway, so they decided to rename it the week. Because when you say the word for Tuesday in French, which is mardi, French is a language that's derived from Latin that literally means Mars Day, or Tuesday, the god of war. Mars, the god of war, is day. In other words, DEI, God, that day. So Tuesday, mardi in French, literally means Mars is day, or for Tuesday. And it sounds like Mars is God, DEI, like De Gratia. Mars is God on Tuesdays. He is the God you honor. And so according to the lexicon and the Encyclopedia of Ancient Religions, Roman prayer is very specific because ever since early on, the most ancient and earliest divine and Roman traditions, most holy, have spoken verbal exactitude as a tenet, and that must be had. Because if it's said in ancient Rome, literally, if you say something aloud, the gods hear it. And so the imperials in Roman Britain came up with the word week. And so when you say the days of the week, day like DEI, right? The days of the week, you're saying the gods of the week, or the weekend gods, or those gods are weak, or the gods of weak people, when referring to that 7-day period. It has a supernatural effect because it refers to both at the same time. And this, and more. And this is one front on a many-fronted battle in a war for supernatural supremacy in Rome and the Roman world at large, across the empire. And so when said aloud, the word day, as in daytime, and DEI, as in a word for God, sounded identical. And so to say the name for Tuesday in France, for instance, is literally Mars is day, or Mars, or Ares, the god of war, is God on that day. They had zero luck changing the names of the days of the week, or the gods for that matter, amongst, that's what I had to try and get them to convert into saints, amongst any peoples that they came into contact with, from Rome to Britain to France to Spain to anywhere in the world. The gods are well known and established. So they just changed the name for the 7-day period that encompasses the whole cycle of the 7 days that are sacred and holy to those 7 days, who said to keep these days holy for us. That way, when you say the days of the week out loud, that phrase, you're saying the gods of weak people, or the weekend gods, if you say the word weekdays, as opposed to the newly Christianized Roman Catholic Judeo-Christian capital G God, who, unlike those weekdays, is a strong day. He's capital G God. He's strong as opposed to those weak ones. And so renaming things was a big booming business in early Christendom. And in some instances, they didn't even change the names, like St. Demeter, St. Dionysus, go figure. They got lazy at some point. But there's more to it than just belief. There is real, actual supernaturality to it. St. Demeter and St. Dionysus also achieved miracles, by the way, and they are real people, that were supernatural in nature and shockingly also actually happened. And these miracles have everything to do, coinkadinkily enough, with what the goddess Demeter and the god Dionysus ruled over before Christianity took over, namely the harvest and wine, respectively. Those miracles actually happened, those saints actually existed, which means the gods also exist, by the way, is how I look at it. Now, some scholars look at it in the same way through an anthropological and archiphysical sense And I call it personally the holy theory. And it's one in which the form itself is actually really the vehicle, and the physicality of that manifestation is the mechanism. But that it is true that the gods are real and themselves will use whatever form they need to manifest their specific realizations and manifestations. Most especially is it accurate for their calendar presets and festivals with exacting timing. And I speak from personal experience when I say even today. But if it had to take the form of people who were named after them, so be it. That the early Christian church recognizes them as saints is notwithstanding, the holy theory would hold that the form itself of the gods is divine and divinely derived, and that man himself, even when he's not aware of it, is, even today, fulfilling that form. So anyway, back to St. Valentine. His festival is the day that he was martyred in Rome, the 14th of February. He's also the patron saint of people with asthma, which is why when you see someone in a film hyperventilating when they see someone attractive, like they might on Valentine's Day, some might reach for an inhaler because they're hyperventilating. She's so hot. That's a terrible hyperventilation sound. Get a sound effect in here. Also, the patron saint of beekeepers, as in, the birds and the bees. Get it? Wink. Now, all these are symbols which have to do with love, and St. Valentine is one point of confluence that all of them have to do with. But what, as a point of confluence of things, are those things that make St. Valentine's feast day into the day that it is today? Amongst the symbols attributed to him... Oh, kid just sneezed. Bless you. Bless you. Oh, what day is it? Venus. May Venus bless you, kitty. And God, too. And Venus. And St. Valentine. And everybody, really. Say bless you to my cat, everybody. Sebastian gets more attention. Anyway, amongst the symbols attributed to him include roses, candy, chocolate, as well as staffs, sheathed swords. In other words, a sword inside of its scabbard, right? Like you're going in and out, right? Both phallic things and one vaginal thing. As well as the image divine of a bishop. And when you think about a bishop's hat, what that looks like for a moment. And that bishop has a rooster nearby him. That's the actual image, as a divine bishop with a rooster nearby him, otherwise known as a cock. This is a cool segue point because the cock is also symbolically and symbologically important to Hermes, or Mercury, the god of communication. And yes, it is intentional. You're supposed to get that impression. It's also that. And this is part of the reason that cards, by the way, because Mercury is the god of communication, are especially important as written devotionals. And devotional has a very religious implication in ancient Rome, to those that we love and are devoted to on Valentine's Day. Because it's also an epithet of Mercury. And I sort of discovered this on my own through a confluential epithetical, which is my own theory, and I have a book on it coming out. It's a confluential epithetical, of Venus, the goddess of love, with the sub-attribute of Mercury to make Venus Valentia, like Valentine. Valentia follows the mercurial order for Venus, the goddess of love, and the god of communication working together, in addition to being a name for Rome and for power. And so to understand St. Valentine, even though he was just a guy named Valentine, probably an asshole to many ignorant observers and researchers, and that's it, again, they're ignorant, who happened to be preaching the good word in Rome, was probably being a dick about it and was martyred for the cause of his religion, had some symbols attributed to him, and in actual history and real consequentiality is far more than that. Because these symbols are important and they're actually really divinely inspired or directly and divinely given. And so it starts with understanding that both in the ancient world as well as in history generally, that you must take this history not as embellished exaggeration or religious fantasies, because it's not fantasy. It is religion, but it's not fantasy. It is actual, factual, literal truth, and you have to start there and entertain that possibility that it is. Whether you do that literally, or if you're just doing it to understand the day better, or St. Valentine's Day better, or from the historical context better, both approaches are valid. But that is the point we're at and where from we start. That's all real. And so there are mercurial, Venusian corresponding attributes that actually correspond, that is to say, will fill the divine form on earth of Venus and Mercury, even if it's under the name of a saint in a Christian church who just happened to be named Valentine. We're going to take another quick break and we'll be right back. Hi! Are you enjoying the Alchemy podcast? Well, stay tuned because soon we'll be on the Listen Up Network. And that means you'll be able to hear me all the time. So listen up. Huh? Get it? Stay tuned for more alchemy. Welcome back for the last leg of the show. I like this having like 3 breaks. That's cool. Welcome back to the last leg of the show for this episode of the Alchemy Podcast. Let's go right back to where we were talking about Venusian mercurial histories. So, St. Valentine's name is clearly older in its divine attributions than it perhaps is in the mundane everyday life history. The history that some people might look at and say, well, he was born this date, and so before that he wasn't a thing. But clearly he was. Not so much him, but Venus, the goddess of love, and Mercury, the god of communication. All the attributes of Venus are prevalent on Valentine's Day. You have his name being significant to those 2 gods who predate Christian Rome with their actual existence and the actual effect, that is to say, the effect and action physically in the world in which you and I live as well. Roses, for instance, they're also sacred to Venus, the goddess of love, which is why you have them on Valentine's Day. Because it's a lovely holiday. I was just answering my, I guess you call him my producer now. It's a lovely holiday, that's why. You're thinking of rosy face. It's a lovely holiday for lovely Venus, which is also why the divine form would choose somebody in the working out of it all with a V name, with all of the proper syllables and pronunciations that Venus herself has combined with Mercury. And believe it or not, the early Christian church was not exactly a group with the sharpest tools in the shed or the brightest crayons in the box. And were actually rather close-minded to almost anything that had to do with the old gods. They did have people studying them for the purposes of stamping them out, which is awful, which they weren't successful at doing, thankfully. Except, of course, when it benefited them in proselytization to grasp onto things in order to best convert the locals to Christianity and then graft Christianity onto the existing Roman state religion. And so they didn't actually go through all of that and think about these things when they attributed them. Such was actually forbidden in spirit as well as in practice. You couldn't just go and say, oh, well, Venus had roses, Valentine can have roses. You just can't do that. They also didn't correspond Venus to Valentine or Mercury to card giving. And there's too many of these coincidences for this to be coincidence. And I can recount for you at least 200 instances of these sorts of synchronicities in my book, which I've cited. It's going to be coming out soon. And by I mean soon, like I'm a writer. It'll come out like in 10 years, if at all. And so it brings us back to holy theory, that the divine form will find a way to manifest in our real and actual world somehow without fail. Or in the words of Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park, God and the gods and the divine and the life that he's speaking about in relation to dinosauric generation will always find a way. Now, the ancient Roman calendar would have you not actually be doing anything of the sort that we celebrate on Valentine's Day, totally observing, but you would also have to take into effect a little-known account of a factoid, really, that very few people, apart from monarchists and historians and archivists who specifically study the reign of Queen Anne, Her Majesty Queen Anne, Queen of Great Britain of the House of Stuart, know. It's forgotten about by most people except for us and maybe those who study perhaps the life and times of George Washington. He has 2 birthdays, if you look on Wikipedia, the old style dating and the new style dating. Well, Her Majesty Queen Anne changed everyone's calendars in England, which included America, by jumping ahead 11 days on a predetermined date in order to get England and the rest of the Europe on the same business calendar, the same calendar for business purposes. And so you have to subtract 11 days. When you do, you get promises of love, which is why it's courtly love. you're courting. Remember the old school not definition, but signification of the word courting. You're courting someone. You're proposing. You're gallantly questing for them. You're trying to win their heart. You're not supposed to be boning them, and you're not supposed to be marrying them on Valentine's Day. Those are actually forbidden in the old calendar. There's a festival of Juno, who is the goddess of marriage, but you're not supposed to marry. Not until, I believe it's March 21st? No. Yes? No, March 1st. Not until after March 1st. This is the purification period. So your love is supposed to be pure. You're supposed to be dedicating your love, devoting your love. It's supposed to be pure, true as you can get love. Right? That's why we dedicate now. And in that spirit, I have a surprise for someone who I love very much. Actually, several surprises for several people that I love very much. But I'm not a hussy. I mean, parents and close friends. Recently, my boyfriend Anthony and I, he's not calling himself my boyfriend anymore, which is pretty sad for me. I'm not sure if he still is or not, because we're still going through the motions of it. Or if we're still not going... and we still care for each other very much. But we're still going through the motions. And I don't mean that in an empty way. I mean that we are still behaving exactly as we behaved before. It's just the terminology is now different, and it eludes me. It makes me feel less than for having worked really hard as I did. And as he did in our relationship, it makes me feel like we're less than. And I don't know why. But I love him very much, and I'm going to try and make up for something. I think I really fucked up Christmas, too. But it's not something to laugh about, though. I intend to make it up for on Valentine's Day. So I have to actually get started on that tonight in order for it to be on time. But I have... only hopes for the future, because I have to. It is better to light a candle than it is to sit and curse the dark. And I hope that I can make up for on Valentine's Day what I should have done. I've actually got him, oh my god, I got him so much stuff for Valentine's Day. I already gave it to him. I have to get him more stuff for Valentine's Day. But, make him dinner and stuff like that. It's going to be nice. I hope. So anyway, wherever you are celebrating Valentine's Day, I hope you celebrate it. And remember to thank not just St. Valentine, who gave his life for something that was completely unrelated and probably has no idea that he would ever be so. He's probably up in heaven being like, wow, I didn't even... Maybe he was gay. I don't know. maybe he was. Maybe he was a jerk who just didn't want to do anything like that. Maybe he's just all into religion. Maybe he's just like, fuck love. I wanted to be a Catholic priest. Marry myself to the church, because fuck love. A time or two this past week, I even said that for a moment or two. But, I'm going to hang in there at least till Valentine's Day. I'll know then. And my relationship status on my Facebook page, my Facebook page, might change after that. But, I am... Until then, I will say on air, I hope he doesn't mind, that Anthony remains the best. The best boyfriend I've ever had. And someone who I've had to aspire to be worthy of. And I'm in awe of him. I'm in awe of his remarkable resiliency. How he sees the world so differently than everyone else. And I gotta tell you, this is not like a dumb, oh my god, be my boyfriend kind of way, but it's in a, I wanted to say something on air about him for Valentine's Day anyway, and I thought, well, it sort of sucks that it's like, got this weird tinge to it, but still, I want to say it anyway, what I was going to say all along, which was this. I don't know who else could hold my heart but him. I don't think anyone can. I don't think anyone will ever understand me like him. He gets me. He understands me. And he loves me. And I said to him the other day, I said, the real test of a relationship is if danger becomes present, what will he do? Will he try to save his own ass? Will he try to save you? And we've answered that question in our relationship. I've answered in the affirmative that I would save him in a real world, twice actually, a real world test. And long story, I'll get to it never. But I said, if you had Snidely Whiplash come and tie you to the railroad tracks like Nell and Dudley Do Right, would you have confidence in telling him, you just wait, Dudley Do Right, Casey's going to come for me, and when he gets here, he's going to kick your ass. Like that. Would you have confidence in that? And so I wrote this for him. Actually, I wrote this about him, not so much for him. It's for my mom, actually. I dedicated it to her, but I wrote it about him in the moment. It's a brief little poem. It's silly and stupid, but it's Valentine's Day, so why not? And it says, it's very alchemical in a way, I guess. It says, as I lay here, gently writing, manifesting every thought from form, 1,000 inspiry Aphrodites are graced from high etheric norm. Altissimia Venusia, or highest Venus, though not to pry, wherefrom doth thou now to me at last minute bend, as one would not methinks, dare I, ask, why from you I might now have divine favor to me lend. For beside me sleepily laying is he whom I would be no man without. Fuck me in the ass. As I lay here, gently writing, manifesting every thought from form, 1,000 inspiry Aphrodites are graced from high etheric norm. Altissimia Venusia, or highest Venus, though not to pry, wherefrom doth thou now to me at last minute bend, as one would not, methinks dare I, ask, why now from you I might find divine favor to lend. For beside me, sleepily laying, is he whom I would be no man without, stirring in his dreamt transcendence, praying along that Elysian road of star-bedecked route. O joy, cry I, with tear in eye, a dextric tear duct is a culprit easy to hide, for far more than he thinks is nigh. Our immediate apprehension awaiting us here inside, an anticipated insipation, of which unsaid thoughts do men attract, yet for ecclesiastical consternation, which hath heretofore burnt witches and brilliant men attacked. A little St. Valentine's inspiration there too. Well, that is all the time we have for this episode. I hope that you have a wonderful Valentine's Day, and we will catch you next Saturday and soon on the Listen Up Podcast Network. My name is Casey. This has been Alchemy, and you've been fantastic. Salve a coagula.